As I was serving the table, I heard Amanda whisper, "Quella old, Shia stupid, only good at serving." Her mother burst out laughing. They were laughing at me, in my own house. But what they didn't know is that I understood every word, and my blood boiled instantly. My name is Margaret. I'm 62 years old, black, a widow, and I've lived my entire life in Washington. I always say my story isn't one you read in fairy tales. Mine is made of sweat, sleepless nights, tears hidden in my pillow, and a heart that, even though broken so many times, never stopped loving. I lost my husband too soon. George, my son, was still young, and I had no one to share the responsibility. It was just me and him against the world. I remember cold mornings taking the crowded bus while it was still dark, with my lunch in my bag and a thin coat that barely cut the wind. I worked cleaning an office, then at a school, sometimes doing odd jobs, doing laundry or caring for the elderly. Anything that brought money into the house, I did. And you know what hurt? It was seeing other mothers coming home early, sitting down with their children for dinner. Not me. Often, George would already be asleep when I got back. I just stared at that little angelic face, wondering if he would ever understand all the sacrifices I made. But despite the hardship, I never let the essentials go unnoticed. George always had food on the table, clean clothes, and, above all, love. Love was what I had in abundance, even when money was slipping through my fingers. I was one of those mothers who would forego buying a new coat for herself just to be able to give her son a decent pair of sneakers. And I won't lie, I often cried alone because I felt like I didn't matter, that my life was just struggle, struggle, struggle. Still, I felt a sense of pride, proud of every bill paid, of every birthday I managed to organize for George, even if it was just a simple cake and a few crooked candles. For me, that was a victory. I didn't need much. I just wanted to see my son grow up, study, and have opportunities I never had. When retirement finally arrived, I thought life would get a little easier. I dreamed of having time for myself, reading a book, tending to my plants on the porch, walking leisurely through the streets of Washington, maybe even revisiting the neighborhood where I grew up. I saw myself, after so much hard work, finally resting. It was as if I'd run a marathon and now deserved to sit down and breathe. But at the same time, there was a void inside me. When you dedicate your entire life to raising someone alone, everything you are, everything you do, ends up revolving around that person. George was my world. My entire life was for him. Every penny, every tear, every sleepless night. And I don't regret it. No, I don't regret it. But it also left me vulnerable. I didn't know how to say no, especially not to him. And that was always my greatest weakness. My heart was too big. I said yes, even when no would have protected me. I accepted the pain just so he wouldn't have to carry any weight. I smiled, even when I wanted to cry. And maybe that's why, so many years later, I ended up paying such a high price for loving without limits. George was 23 when he met Amanda. I remember well the night he came home after work. He threw his backpack on the couch. It felt like he was floating. "Mom, I need to tell you something," he said, unable to hide his smile. "All right, spit it out," I replied, laughing, already imagining what it was about. "I met someone," he said, almost in a whisper, like a boy who had just revealed a secret. "Her name is Amanda. She's amazing. Mom, you'll love her." In that moment, my heart filled with a hope I hadn't even known still existed. I wanted to see my son happy. I wanted to believe he'd finally found someone who completed him. Days later, he brought Amanda to meet me. I remember the door opening and her walking in with a wide smile. "Hi, Mrs. Johnson. It's only nice to finally meet you," she said, hugging my son around the waist as if he were her trophy. "Please, call me Margaret," I replied, trying to be friendly. Amanda spoke quickly and gestured a lot. Two boys ran around her, laughing loudly. "These are my boys," she said proudly, pulling the little ones closer. I bent down, trying to be sweet. "Hey there, sweethearts." Their eyes were lively, innocent, but deep down I already felt a different weight entering my life. It didn't take long for George to tell me his plans. "We're moving in together, Mom. We found this small apartment near work. It's not much, but it's ours." "George, don't you think it's too soon?" I asked, holding his hand. "Mom, when you know, he insisted, with the blind certainty of someone who has never had to hold the world alone. Amanda added, with a confident smile. "We don't need much, Margaret. Just love and hard work." I wanted to believe it. I really did. And for a few weeks, I almost did. George would call me excitedly. "Mom, Amanda cooks pasta better than anyone. You have to try it." In another call, "The boys are getting used to me. They even call me George now, like it's a game." I listened and smiled, even as worry began to grow inside me. Every time I saw Amanda, I noticed a different urgency in her, a way of speaking, as if she had already won more than just my son's heart. One afternoon, we were having coffee in my kitchen. Amanda looked around, as if measuring the space. "You know, Margaret, George tells me you've worked so hard your whole life. You deserve to rest now. Maybe we can take care of things together, as a family." The way she said, "as a family," gave me chills. I wanted to think it was affection, but it sounded more like possession. Still, I smiled. "All I want is for my son to be happy," I replied, and Amanda smiled back. But there was something in her eyes that I couldn't decipher at the time. As if there was an ulterior motive hidden behind every word. George, blinded by love, saw nothing. "Mom, you'll see. Amanda's the one. She's strong. She's been through only much. She understands me." I just nodded. I didn't want to dim my son's light. I didn't want to be the bitter mother who crushed his dreams. So I silenced my doubts and let it happen. Shortly after they got together, Amanda started coming to me asking to borrow money. Amanda showed up at my door one rainy afternoon, with both boys clinging to her. "Margaret, I hate to ask, but we're short this month, just $50 for groceries. I promise I'll pay you back as soon as I can." She spoke softly, almost whispering, as if she wanted me to believe this was a special request, an exception. And I, with my soft heart, couldn't say no. "Of course, honey. Don't worry about it. Kids need to eat." I reached into my purse, handed over the money, and remained silent. But it didn't stop there. Days later, another request. "Margaret, the rent came higher this month. Could you help us just this once?" This once. Those two words were repeated so many times that they lost their meaning. Every week there was a reason: gas, electricity, the boys, school, even money for the bus. George always remained silent, staring at the floor, letting Amanda talk. And that hurt me even more. One night I sat with him in the kitchen. "George, what's going on? You're working. Why is Amanda always asking for money?" He sighed deeply. "Mom, things are tight. She's doing her best. Please, don't make her feel bad. Don't make her feel bad." I swallowed hard. "I'm the one pulling money out of my retirement. You think that feels good for me?" He didn't answer. He just ran his hand over his face, like a boy who doesn't know what to say. And I finally gave in again. Because looking at George and seeing that tired look broke me inside. I thought, if I don't help, he'll suffer. If I don't help, the boys will go hungry. Amanda knew this. She knew exactly how to break me. One day she arrived, her eyes filled with tears, holding the hand of one of her children. "Margaret, I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. They need shoes for school. I'll pay you back, I swear." My heart broke. I opened my wallet and handed over the money without thinking. And when I closed the door after she left, my hands were shaking. I knew that money would never come back. The months passed, and the pattern continued. Every time I said yes, a part of me died inside. I felt used, but at the same time guilty for thinking that. No mother wants to believe her child is allowing her to be exploited, but that's exactly what was happening. I remember one night in particular. I was lying there, staring at the ceiling, when I whispered to myself, how did I get here? How did I become the bank for my own son's life? The tears fell, and I quickly wiped them away, as if I were ashamed to even cry. I wanted to believe it was temporary, that they'd soon get things sorted out. But the truth is, it never stopped. The money drained from my account like water, and with each unpaid loan, the weight on my chest grew. I was no longer just a helpful mother. I was becoming something worse, a woman held hostage by her own kindness. One day, Amanda came to me with that way she had of speaking, as if she had already figured everything out. She was holding the children, with a tired but determined look in her eyes. She sat in my kitchen as if she owned the place. "Margaret, we've been thinking. What if we lived with you? It would be so much easier for everyone. No rent, we could save money, take care of the kids, and you wouldn't be alone," she said, as if offering a practical solution. I remember how my hands shook when she spoke. A mixture of pride and fear came over me. Pride because, deep down, I'd always wanted to help. Fear because something about that proposal sounded too big. George, standing nearby, unsure of what to say, just looked at me with that smile of someone who trusts deeply. "Are you sure this is the best thing to do?" I asked, trying to hide my distress. "Will you be able to help with the bills? Because it's my house, and I want peace." George took my hand, squeezing it as if asking permission to a dream. "Mom, please. We can contribute. I work. Amanda does her part too. It'll be like family, just like you always wanted for me." Amanda added, "We'll manage, Margaret. It won't be forever, just until we get our heads back on our feet. I promise." I thought about the nights I'd come home tired, the times I'd skipped shopping to make sure George had what he needed. I also thought about the many times I'd wished I had someone around, someone to share the joys of everyday life. And then the idea began to seem, not just sensible, but right. I found myself imagining a full house, children's laughter in the hallway, fewer separate bills, more human warmth. "Okay," I said, my voice breaking. "If that's what will help you, then come. The house can fit all of us." In my mind, I was doing the right thing. I thought I'd open my home out of love, not weakness. I thought that with everyone together, we could organize the chores, share the expenses, and that maybe, finally, I'd have the family I'd always dreamed of. The first few days were full of grace and activity. The children ran around the room, George helped with the shopping, and Amanda thanked me at every meal. I felt useful, loved. "Thank you, Mom," she'd say, and my chest tightened with joy. I felt like I'd done what any mother would do. But that warmth faded too quickly, and soon my house stopped being my home. It was as if I'd signed an invisible contract, where I was the maid and they were the owners. I cleaned, cooked, did the laundry, made the beds, everything. I'd wake up early and find toys strewn across the living room, dishes piled high in the sink, wet towels thrown on the bathroom floor, and you know what hurt? No one bothered to help me. Amanda always had an excuse. "I'm tired, Margaret. Take care of the kids while I get some rest." And I, with that soft heart that always said yes, took on the responsibilities as if they were my own. My son, George. Oh, how it hurt. The boy I'd raised with such sacrifice, whom I'd shielded from the world, now walked right past me, oblivious to how overwhelmed I was. He'd come home from work, sit on the couch, open his phone, and pretend not to notice the chaos around him. "Mom, Amanda already takes care of the boys all day. Don't be so hard on her," he'd say, as if I were the villain. I swallowed hard, but inside, my heart was breaking. I became invisible in my own home. When guests came, Amanda would sit with her friends in the living room, laughing loudly, gossiping for hours, while I ran from the kitchen to the laundry room, from the laundry room to the living room, as if I were part of the hired service. And I heard the laughter, the whispers, that mocking way of speaking. And I knew they were talking about me. What hurt me wasn't just the excessive workload, but the contempt. Amanda looked at me as if I were a burden, an old woman there only to serve. And George, my own son, didn't defend me. He remained silent. His silence screamed louder than any words. At night, when the house finally quieted down, I would lie in bed and stare at the ceiling, asking God where I went wrong. Had I loved too much? Had I taught my son not to respect me by always saying yes? I felt trapped inside what had once been my refuge. Every yes, I said, ripped a piece of me away. I said yes to avoid arguments, to avoid seeing my son sad, to avoid leaving the children unattended. But these yeses became chains, chains that bound me until I almost forgot who I was. My life had been turned upside down. I was no longer Margaret, the woman who had fought her entire life, the mother who raised her son alone, the widow who had survived loss. I was simply the one who serves. And this was, perhaps, the cruelest pain of all, being erased in my own home by the very family I had built with so much effort. The days were becoming more and more the same. Amanda spent her mornings in her pajamas, saying she was too tired to look for a job. "It's no use, Margaret. I've already sent my resume, but no one responds. And also, who will take care of the children if I work?" She said this while I already had my hands full of soap, washing dishes that weren't even mine. I wanted to believe it was true, that she was trying. But the truth is, Amanda never seemed in a hurry to change. She spent her days at home, fiddling with her phone, making excuses. And when she wasn't lying on the couch, she'd invite her friends over for the afternoon. Those afternoons were a nightmare. They'd arrive laughing loudly, bags of chips and soda in hand, shamelessly. They'd spread out in my living room as if they owned the place. I'd hear everything from the kitchen while sweeping the floor and changing the children's bedding. "Look, Amanda, you really got lucky," one of them said, throwing her feet up on the coffee table. "You've got a man who supports you, and you still have his mother to take care of everything. The only thing better than that is winning the lottery." The others burst out laughing, and Amanda not only laughed but added, "Yeah, girls, this house is a blessing. Margaret takes care of the boys, cooks better than me, and even pays the bills when I'm absent. It's like I became a boss without meaning to." They screamed with laughter. I, standing in the kitchen, felt my face heat up. Tears came, but I swallowed them back, not wanting to give them the pleasure of seeing me cry. Another time, I heard Amanda complain, "Oh, I can't take this life anymore. It's so tiring. These kids, this house. Thank goodness Margaret likes to keep busy. Otherwise, I would have gone crazy." A friend responded mockingly, "Do you like it? Of course you do. A lonely old woman needs to feel useful. Let her work herself to death, Amanda. You need to rest, woman. Enjoy it." And Amanda laughed out loud, as if it were the funniest thing in the world. When George came home from work, he'd pretend he didn't see anything. He'd walk straight past the living room, give Amanda a quick kiss, and go upstairs. Sometimes I'd call out, "George, can you help me with the groceries?" He'd reply without looking, "Later, Mom, I'm tired." That later never came. I found myself running around, picking up toys from the floor, making dinner for everyone, tidying up towels, washing pots and pans, all while listening to the laughter in the living room, my house. And yet, I was treated like a stranger, someone who was only there to serve. One afternoon, Amanda said loud enough for me to hear, "You know what's great? I don't even need to ask anymore. Margaret already does everything herself. If I let her, she spends the day taking care of the house and the boys without complaining. It's almost like she was born for this." Silence gripped me in that moment. I didn't have the strength to respond. I just clutched the dish towel in my hands and took a deep breath, trying to swallow the pain. Because if I opened my mouth, I would collapse. And so it went, day after day. The humiliations weren't always direct, but they were present in every mocking laugh, in every whisper interrupted when I entered the room, in every dish that appeared dirty in the sink without anyone thanking me for washing it. I felt smaller and smaller, invisible, as if my entire life had been reduced to being the maid in my own house, until one night everything was about to change. I'll never forget that day. Amanda came to me in the kitchen, her tone like she wasn't asking, but rather ordering. "Margaret, my mother is coming over for dinner tonight. I want everything to be perfect." It wasn't an invitation. It was a warning. I took a deep breath, swallowed my sorrow, and began preparing the table as usual. I made roast chicken, vegetables, salad. I did my best, because despite all the pain, I still had that pride in taking good care of the house. When the doorbell rang, Amanda ran to the door. "Mommy!" she cried, exaggerated with joy. An older woman entered, her hair tied in a tight bun, expensive clothes that didn't match her rough face. She looked me up and down, as if sizing up a maid. "That's Margaret," Amanda said, pointing at me with a crooked smile. "She does everything around here." I extended my hand, trying to be cordial. "Nice to meet you. Welcome to my home." She squeezed my fingers without looking me in the eyes and replied dryly, I already felt the shiver run up my spine. We sat at the table. George, as always, seemed oblivious, trying to keep the peace. The children played in the corner of the room. The conversation started off light, about the neighborhood and Amanda's childhood, but the mood soon changed. As I poured the wine, I heard Amanda whisper something to her mother in Italian. "Quella old, it's a stupid thing, just a good service." Her mother laughed out loud, putting her hand to her mouth. "Hai ragione, Amanda. Guarda come corre come una domestica." My heart raced. I understood every word. They were saying I was a stupid old woman, good only for serving, that I ran around like a maid in my own house. I trembled inside, but continued serving. George didn't notice, distracted by his plate. Amanda whispered again, this time with mockery in her voice. "It's incredible. It lives here, and it seems there. Our servant. You don't even need to pay a cleaning lady, Mama." They both laughed. I dropped the platter on the table with force, the noise making everyone look at me. I felt my face burn, but my voice came out firm, cutting through the air. "I understand." There was immediate silence. Amanda paled. "Are what?" I stared at them both, my chest rising and falling rapidly. I said I understood, every word. "You think you can call me stupid? You think you can laugh at me like I'm invisible?" Amanda's mother tried to hide it, laughing nervously. "You must be mistaken, Margaret. You don't know Italian." I slammed my hand on the table. "So che cosa hai detto?" The two of them fell silent, surprised. The whole room was in shock. George stared at me in disbelief. The silence after my words was so heavy you could hear everyone breathing. Amanda's eyes widened, her mouth open in disbelief. You speak Italian?" he stammered, looking at his mother. I took a deep breath, trying to contain the fury burning inside me. "Yes, I do. I lived in Italy for a year when I was young. I got a scholarship. I studied. I worked. You may not know, but I have a history. I have much more dignity than you ever imagined." Amanda's mother tried to laugh again, but her voice was weak. "That doesn't change anything." "It changes everything," I shouted, my hand firmly on the table. "Because now you know I'm not stupid, I'm not blind, and I'm not someone's maid." Amanda stood up, arms crossed, her gaze full of venom. "You're exaggerating. It was just a conversation. There was no need to put on such a show." "Show?" I laughed, but it was bitter. "Show is you turning me into a maid in my own house. Show is asking me for money, month after month, without paying a single cent back. Show is bringing your friends to laugh at me in the living room while I wash the dishes." She tried to interrupt. "I just wanted to help. Margaret, you who—" "Help?" I cut in, slamming my hand on the table again. "You always wanted to take advantage. I opened my door, gave you and your children a roof over my head, and in return, I received contempt. You're a freeloader, Amanda. You live off me and still have the nerve to laugh at me." Amanda turned red, her voice shaking with anger. "Don't talk to me like that. I'm your son's wife." It was then that I turned to George, who had remained motionless until then, unable to speak. "And you, George?" My voice cracked with pain. "Did I raise you to be this? A coward? You watch me being humiliated? You watch me being exploited, and you say nothing? Have you forgotten who raised you? Who worked their entire lives so you could have the bare minimum?" He lowered his head, unable to respond. That hurt more than any of Amanda's words. Her mother stood up, straightening her coat, and said dismissively, "We don't need to hear this drama. Amanda, let's go." I turned, looked her straight in the eye, and pointed to the door. "You're sure of one thing. You don't have to, because I don't want you here anymore. Get out of my house now." Amanda screamed, her voice shrill. "You can't kick my mother out." "Yes, I can." My voice came out firm, firmer than I expected. "This house is mine, and anyone who doesn't respect me doesn't stay here." For a moment, everyone stood still. Amanda was breathing heavily. Her mother was glaring. George seemed too small for all that. The children, quiet in the corner, just stared in confusion. I knew from that moment on there would be no turning back. But deep inside me, for the first time in a long time, I felt strength. The same strength that made me raise my son alone, that made me work my entire life. The difference was that now, I was no longer going to waste that strength enduring humiliation. I took a deep breath and said, facing the three of them, "Enough. I will no longer live off my kindness. I will no longer carry you on my back. Whoever wants to stay must respect me. Whoever doesn't, the door is open." Amanda pulled her mother by the arm and stormed out, slamming the door shut, leading her to a taxi. George sat motionless, not daring to look at me. I sat back down at the table, my body trembling. But for the first time in years, I took a deep breath and felt it. I had stood up. I had spoken. But that night seemed to never end. When Amanda came back from the street, she screamed, banged her hand on the table, and called me ungrateful, a bitter old woman. "How dare you speak of my mother like that?" she screamed, her face red, her eyes flashing. "You have no respect, Margaret. This house is our home now, too." I remained silent, staring at her. It hurt, but it wasn't surprising. And what cut me most wasn't her words, but George's silence. He stood there, leaning against the wall, without opening his mouth, as if it had nothing to do with him. "Say something, George," I shouted, almost pleading. "Are you going to let her say this is her house?" He looked away, scratched the back of his neck, and murmured, "Mom, maybe it's time to accept that we share everything now." Those words pierced me like a knife. My own son, the boy I'd raised alone, now had the nerve to cast me aside, as if I were an unwelcome guest in my own home. That night, I lay in bed with my heart bleeding. The tears came uncontrollably. I remembered all the nights I'd come home from work exhausted and still cooked meals, washed clothes, helped George with his homework. I remembered the cold, the crowded bus, the times I'd put off buying myself a new coat to secure a pair of sneakers for him. All of that. And now I was treated like a burden, an obstacle. I cried until the pillow was soaked. I woke up the next day as if I'd slept at the bottom of a well. My body was heavy, but my mind was clear. I didn't cry like I had the night before. I just got up slowly, sat on the edge of the bed, and stared at the floor for a few seconds. The silence in the house was eerie. Amanda and George were still asleep. The children snored in the next room. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't get up to make coffee or clean up any mess. I looked in the bedroom mirror and said softly, almost like a prayer, "Enough, Margaret. Today is the day." I calmly changed my clothes, simple pants, a dark blouse, and the worn-out coat I always wore to brave the Washington cold. I grabbed my bag, stuffed my documents inside, and left silently. The cold morning air hit my face and woke me up completely. I walked to the bus stop like someone walking to a trial. My heart was pounding, but there was a certainty inside me I'd never felt before. I arrived downtown and stood for a moment in front of the real estate agency's facade. The blue letters of the sign shone against the gray sky. I took a deep breath and pushed open the glass door. The bell hanging overhead jingled, announcing my entrance. Inside, the smell was of freshly brewed coffee mixed with paper and printer ink. There were desks with computers, stacks of contracts, and phones ringing. A young broker in a slightly wrinkled suit approached me with an automatic smile. "Good morning, ma'am. How can I help you?" I looked him straight in the eye and spoke bluntly, without stuttering. "I want to sell my house." He blinked a few times, as if he didn't understand. "Sell? Are you sure?" "More than ever. The house is mine. It's paid off. The deed is in my name. I want to advertise it today." The young man led me to a table. He pulled out a chair and offered me a glass of water. I sat down, adjusted my bag on my lap, and waited. He opened his computer and began typing. "Full name?" he asked. "Margaret Johnson. Property address? 218 Maple Street, Shaw District." I said it all at once, as if I had rehearsed those words 1,000 times in my head. He wrote everything down, attentively. "How many rooms?" 3. One of them was renovated into an office. "Any recent renovations?" "Roof replaced 5 years ago, living room painted last year, plumbing overhauled," I replied firmly, remembering every sacrifice made to pay for these renovations. The broker looked at me with interest. "With this location, demand is high. If you give permission, we can take photos today and add them to a list of buyers already waiting." I nodded. I want it fast." He typed a few more things, printed out a contract, and pushed it toward me. "I just need your signature, Ms. Margaret." I picked up the pen. My hand was shaking, but when I touched the tip to the paper, I felt a huge weight lift from my shoulders. I signed each line slowly, as if it were liberation. The broker smiled with satisfaction. "Perfect. I'll take care of everything. Leave it to me." I stood up, thanked him, and as I left the real estate agency, I felt the cold air hit my face again. But this time, it wasn't just cold. It was freedom. The Washington cold didn't seem to affect me, because something else was burning inside me: determination. When I opened the front door, the living room was as usual, toys scattered about, the television tuned to some cartoon, coats thrown on the couch. I took a deep breath and headed straight for the hallway without saying a word. Amanda was sitting with her phone in her hand, her face buried in the screen. When she saw me passing by, she looked up suspiciously. "Where have you been?" he asked, narrowing his eyes. "I took care of some things on the street," I replied dryly, without stopping. She arched her eyebrows. "What things? You left early. You didn't even make breakfast properly." I didn't answer. I kept walking to my room, pushed the door open, and closed it behind me. I locked the key. The sharp sound of the lock echoed like a cry of freedom. I sat down on the bed, my bag still on my lap, and closed my eyes. I just wanted silence. Just a little silence. From the other side of the door, I heard her hurried footsteps, and soon her shrill voice invaded my refuge. "Margaret, aren't you going to make lunch? It's almost noon. What do you think you're doing in there?" I didn't answer. I remained silent, looking at my hands, trying to control my breathing. She knocked on the door, getting louder and louder. "You're going to stay locked in there, are you? Have you completely lost your mind? What do you think? That you can just leave us like that?" Silence. She laughed mockingly. "You know what it sounds like. It sounds like a crazy old lady. That's what you've become. You should be in a nursing home, Margaret, not here messing with other people's lives." The words stabbed through the door. My eyes filled with tears, but I didn't open my mouth. I knew responding would only cause me more pain, so I took a deep breath and let her venom flow without reacting. Outside, I heard footsteps moving away and a final sentence thrown into the air. "If you keep this up, I'll be the one taking care of you, and nobody here has time for that." I rested my head on the pillow, pressed my hand to my chest, and let the tears flow silently. But unlike other times, they weren't tears of defeat. They were tears of certainty. The certainty that soon it would all be over, and I would never again hear Amanda tell me I belonged in a nursing home. 2 days passed, as if they were 2 years. I barely slept. I stayed locked in my room most of the time, listening to Amanda complain outside, asking when I was going to be normal again, when I was going to cook, when I was going to clean up the kids' mess. I pretended not to hear. In truth, I heard every word, but I wouldn't let it in anymore. I was too tired to defend myself. On the morning of the second day, my cell phone vibrated on top of my dresser. The number was unfamiliar, but I knew who it was. I answered with a shaky voice. "Hello? Ms. Margaret? This is Daniel from the real estate agency. I'm calling with good news." His voice was clear, almost cheerful. "We already have an interested buyer. He wants to close quickly." My heart raced. "What?" I whispered, as if I couldn't believe it. "That's right. They visited yesterday, loved the location and the renovations. They're willing to pay cash, no negotiations. If you can come today, we'll get everything ready for the preliminary contract signing." I put my hand to my chest. I felt the tears coming, but I held them back. Good heavens. I took a deep breath. "Of course, I will. I'll be there in an hour." I hung up slowly, stood there in the room for a few seconds, staring into space. I knew. This was the answer I'd silently prayed for the night I'd cried until my pillow was soaked. I grabbed my bag, straightened my blouse, and left the room. Amanda was in the living room, cross-legged, watching TV. She glanced at me quickly. "Are you going out again?" he asked in that accusatory tone. "I will," I replied shortly, without giving any explanation. She snorted. "You look weird, Margaret. That secretive look on your face isn't fooling anyone." I ignored it. I walked through the door and felt the cold Washington wind hit my face. I walked to the bus stop with firm steps, almost as if I were being carried. The real estate agency was bustling. People were coming and going, employees were talking on the phone, printers were humming. When I walked in, Daniel came up to me with a big smile, a black briefcase in his hand. "Miss Margaret, I'm so glad you came so quickly." He led me to his table, offering me a chair. "Look, you're in luck. This house attracted immediate interest. We have a young couple, newlyweds, who want to move in within a few weeks. They're in love with your home." I sat down slowly, adjusting my bag on my lap. "Are they really going to pay cash?" "Yes, ma'am. They have the full amount available. In fact, they've already transferred it to the escrow account. As soon as you sign the sales agreement, the process will proceed directly to the deed." I shook my head, still in shock. I never thought it would be that fast. "When the house is good and the price is right, it happens," he said, opening the folder and showing me the documents. "Here's the preliminary contract. Read it carefully." I picked up the papers, my glasses slipping down my nose. Each word felt like a step out of the chains that had bound me for months. "Here," he pointed, "is where you confirm that you are the sole owner." I nodded. "Yes, it's just me. It's always just me." I signed. "Here," he continued, "is the clause that gives 7 days to vacate the property from the signing of the deed." She smiled bitterly. 7 days will be enough." Daniel looked me in the eye, as if he sensed something unspoken. "You look relieved." I let out a short, almost nervous laugh. "Relieved is an understatement, my son. This is like breathing after years of being trapped underwater." He handed me the last sheet. "And here, Mrs. Margaret, is the final signature on the preliminary contract. After that, just wait for the notary." I picked up the pen. My hands were shaking, but this time not from fear, but from victory. I wrote my name slowly, letter by letter. When I finished, I placed the pen down on the table and took a deep breath. "There," he said, almost in a whisper. Daniel smiled. "It's done. In 2 days, the money should be in your account." I felt the tears well up before I even realized it. I brought my hand to my face, laughing and crying at the same time. "Thank you. Thank you, my God." He offered me a tissue. "You deserve it, ma'am." I stood there for a few more minutes, listening to him explain the next steps, But the truth is, I could barely pay attention. My mind was elsewhere. All I could think about was what it would be like to go home knowing this hell had a set end date. As I stood to leave, Daniel shook my hand firmly. Ms. Margaret, you have no idea how many people come here devastated, trying to get out of difficult situations, but few have the courage to make the decision you did. I looked at him, my eyes still wet. Courage is when we have no choice. I walked out of the real estate agency with firm steps, the cold wind hitting my face again. But this time it wasn't just wind. It was freedom seeping through my skin. ChatGPT said, I opened the door slowly with the key, as if knowing they were entering a minefield. The living room was a mess, toys on the floor, the television blaring, the smell of reheated pasta. Amanda, cross-legged on the couch, was fiddling with her phone. George, at the table, ate absent-mindedly. They looked up at the same time. Finally, Amanda said, did you go out and take care of things again? Because the sink is full and the kids are hungry. I calmly closed the door, hung my coat on the hanger, and took a breath before speaking. I have an announcement, he said firmly. I've sold the house. The television sound seemed to fade. George froze with his fork in midair. Amanda blinked, then gave a short, incredulous laugh. What's that? She stood up. Please repeat. I sold the house. I signed the contract today. The buyer arrives in 2 days for the final inspection and picks up the keys next week. You have 2 days to move out. George's fork clattered onto his plate. Amanda took a step forward, her face burning. Are you crazy? She shouted. You can't make a decision like that without talking to us. The house is in my name, I replied, looking straight ahead. I paid every bill, every renovation, and it's in my house that you've been calling me a servant. It's over. That's abuse, Margaret. Amanda pointed her finger in my face. I have children. Where do you think I'll be living in 2 days? At your mother's house, I said dryly. She looked so comfortable in here, laughing at me. There must be a spare room for you. You're cruel, she slapped her chest. Cruel and ungrateful. I take care of your house every day. Do you? I let out a short laugh. I'm the one who cooks. I'm the one who cleans. I'm the one who wakes up at dawn with the kids. You take care of my patients. That's what. George finally stood up, his voice trembling. Mom, calm down. We can talk. 2 days is impossible. We need time. George, time is what I've given you since the first loan that never came back, I replied. I gave you time when you turned my office into a gossip circle. I gave you time when your wife called me stupid at my desk. Now time is mine. You're destroying our family, Amanda shouted, pacing theatrically. Look what you're doing to your own son. What I did was raise my son alone, I said, staring at George. And now I am handing you back the responsibility of being a man. Get a home. Protect your own. Don't use your mother as a crutch. Don't talk to me like that, he retorted, hurt. I am trying. Are you trying to stay silent while I'm humiliated? I asked, my chest burning. Are you trying to turn your face away when I ask for help carrying groceries? Are you trying to let me wash everyone's dishes while you all laugh on the couch? Amanda clapped her hands sarcastically. Bravo, Margaret. Beautiful speech. Too bad the law doesn't work when you shout. You'll have to give me half the money from the sale. Go to court, I replied. The deed is mine. There's not a penny of yours in these walls. And please, don't threaten me in my house. This is over. She swallowed hard, her eyes flashing. I'm not going anywhere in 2 days. You're not the boss of me. Yes, I will, until the last minute. I pointed to the hallway. Start packing. The new resident will come the day after tomorrow to inspect. He won't set foot here and see this mess. I'll hand over the house with dignity, as I've always maintained. George approached, pleading. Mom, please. 4 days. Just 4. I'll find a cheap hotel room. I'll find a way. But 2 isn't enough. I took a breath, fought with myself for a moment, and shook my head. 3, I said slowly. 3 days, not an hour more. And until then, I don't want any visitors. I don't want any gossip. I don't want any yelling. You pack. I'll clean. Look at her. Amanda turned to George. She rules everything, decides everything, as if she owned the world. Owner of the house, Amanda, I corrected, and of my life, back. She came towards me, finger raised. You'll regret it. I'll make you pay for every word. Enough. My voice was low, cutting through the air. No one in my house threatens me anymore. Say one more word like that, and I'll call the police. A thick silence fell. The children, who had stopped at the bedroom door, stared at me with those big eyes. I bent down, softening my voice. My loves, Grandma loves you. But Grandma's going to live somewhere else now. It'll be better for everyone, okay? You'll be fine. Amanda pulled the boys, irritated. Don't talk to them. You're leaving us out in the street. I am getting you off my back, I replied, already tired. You chose the path you chose when you decided to treat me like a maid. George ran his hand over his face, dejected. Mom, I was wrong. I know I was wrong. But it doesn't have to be this way. I did. My voice was soft, and it hurt. Because every other time I gave in, you went further. Now it's over. I took a pad and pen, wrote slowly, and highlighted the sheet. List of what's mine and what's left. I handed it to George. The refrigerator, stove, table, and bed in my room are for the buyer. The rest of what's yours, pack it up. Amanda, pick up your things from my bathroom and don't touch my photos. You're a monster, Amanda hissed. I'm a tired woman, I replied, and finally on my feet. She huffed, grabbed her phone, and started typing furious messages. I went to the window, opened the curtains, and let the light in. Then I walked to the kitchen, turned off the television, and the beeping microwave. From now on, I said, turning back to the two of them, no visitors, no friends, no yelling. 3 days. Tomorrow morning at 9, I want the first boxes in the living room. I already ordered them at the market. Who do you think it is? Amanda exploded. The owner of my peace, I replied, placing my hand on my heart, and I came to seek her. George lowered his eyes. Amanda kicked a toy, crossed the hall, and slammed the bedroom door. The silence that remained was ragged, but it was spacious. I took a deep breath, rested my hands on the table, and let my body tremble for a few seconds. Then I grabbed a clean cloth and an empty box and started with myself, drawer by drawer, photo by photo, memento by memento. While I was packing, I said to myself, almost in a whisper, 3 days, and I am reborn. Muffled curses came from the bedroom. From the kitchen, the clock ticked to a new time, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like every second was working in my favor. The last day arrived like a weight in the air. I woke before sunrise, sat on the edge of my bed, and stared at the bare walls of my room. Boxes stacked in the hallway, suitcases closed, the sound of Amanda's hurried footsteps dragging things around. I knew that in a few hours my life would change forever. Amanda had been furious since the night before. Her every gesture was a provocation. She slammed drawers, sighed loudly, complained about everything. Every 5 minutes, she'd come to me with some cutting remark. That's inhumane, Margaret. A woman your age should be in a nursing home, not throwing people out onto the street. You'll burn in hell for leaving children homeless. Write it down. You'll regret it. I listened to her without responding. There was a new silence within me, a silence of someone who no longer needed to fight. George tried to calm her, but his silence was cowardly. And that silence, yes, still hurt me. At 10 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang. My heart pounded. I opened the door and saw the real estate agent, Daniel, accompanied by the young couple who had purchased the house. They were holding hands, their eyes full of hope, as if they saw a possible future before them. I smiled at them, even though my chest was tight. "Good morning, Mrs. Margaret," Daniel said cheerfully. "Can we come in?" "Sure," I replied, making room. Amanda huffed, arms crossed. She looked at the couple as if they were trespassers and shouted, "Enjoy it! because this old woman just sold her soul along with the house. The couple looked embarrassed. Daniel, trying to remain calm, looked away. I just took a deep breath. "Amanda," I said firmly, "that's it. Grab your things and leave." She screamed, her face red. "I'm not leaving. You can't throw me out like that, Margaret. I have children." I pointed to the door. 2 days was the deadline I gave, and the deadline is up. The children, confused, tugged at the hem of her shirt. "Mommy, shall we go?" they asked softly. Amanda sighed, angrily grabbed her bags, and before leaving, turned to me. "You're a monster." I looked into her eyes. "No, Amanda. I'm just a woman who's tired of being exploited." She stomped off, dragging the children behind her. George followed close behind, backpack slung over his shoulder. He stopped in the doorway, staring at me with tears in his eyes. "Mom, I was wrong. I know I was wrong. I let everything get out of control. But don't forget that I'm still your son." My heart sank. I wanted to hug him, but I couldn't pat the head of a man who chose to be a boy. I lightly touched his arm and said, "I'll never stop loving you, George. But now you need to learn to walk without using my life as a crutch. Go. Be a man." He lowered his head, turned, and left. The door closed behind them. And the silence that remained wasn't heavy. It was a clean silence. The couple toured the rooms of the house, admiring every detail. "Look at the light in this room," the young wife said, smiling. Her husband added, "This will be the children's room." I watched them, moved. This house, which had been the scene of my pain, would now be the beginning of something beautiful for someone. Daniel approached, holding a black folder. "Miss Margaret, here is the final contract. The funds have already been transferred to your account. You just need to sign for the keys." I picked up the pen. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. I signed slowly, letter by letter, as if each stroke were a healing scar. When I finished, Daniel squeezed my hand. "It's done. Congratulations." The tears fell before I even realized it. I sat down on the kitchen chair, closed my eyes, and let the tears flow, this time with relief. A huge weight lifted from my chest. 2 days later, I opened my bank app, and there it was, the sale amount deposited into my account. I stared at those numbers as if they were a mirage. I thanked God silently, crying again, but this time smiling too. I bought a ticket. I kept a few clothes, documents, and an old photo of George as a child in his school uniform. I left the rest behind. And today I write these words from Rome. The city welcomed me like a hug. I walked through Piazza Navona, heard the fountains babbling, smelled the strong coffee mingling with the scent of flowers from the balconies. I walked along Via del Corso, saw shop windows full of life, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like the world was mine again. I sat in front of the Colosseum, the sun gilding the ancient stones, and let the gentle wind caress my face. I closed my eyes and thought, I'm back in the place where I first learned to be free. This time, it wasn't a scholarship. It wasn't youth. It was choice. I looked up at the Roman sky and said to myself, Margaret, you have won. You no longer have chains nor debts of soul. What you have left is time, and you will live every second of it without a guilty conscience. And, with a light heart, I continued walking through the narrow streets, determined to enjoy the world that still awaited me.